Hello and welcome to Personal Stories. Today you will hear 3 wonderful stories told by people just like you and me, telling true personal stories from their lives. Let's get started.
Personal Stories is sponsored by Silver Spring Medical Center and United Insurance and Investments.
Hello and welcome to Personal Stories. My name is John Melmid, and our first storyteller today is Reilly. Caitlin has told stories throughout the greater Washington, D.C. area, and today her story title is A Sight for Sore Eyes.
So I actually got in through improv, which I wasn't expecting to do either. I had a boyfriend at the time who really wanted to take this improv workshop and a good friend who wanted to take it as well, but they weren't friends with each other, so I had to come along and ended up having a blast, and then took some more improv classes, and a friend from improv was directing a story show. And it was a story show about love stories, and I actually told the story that I had today, and I told it all the time. I would tell it like just casually to people at parties, and he encouraged me to audition, so I did, and that was the first story show I was in. So after I graduated from college, I moved back to DC, and like any underemployed liberal arts major, I decided to focus my time and energy on finding love. And the first thing I did as part of this plan was join a co-ed soccer team, as you do when you're looking for love. And several months in, the plan was not very successful. Most of the passes my teammates made were actual passes, and even that didn't happen very often because of the patriarchy. And one night I was playing, and a cross was coming in from the side, and I realized it was coming right at me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is my chance. I'll kick this ball, I'll score a goal, some guy in the soccer team will finally notice me, and he'll think like, she's a really good soccer player. Maybe she should be my girlfriend. So the ball comes across, I hit it one touch, it sails off my foot, and for a moment, I know it's a goal. And then it hits a defender's shin, ricochets up, and hits me in the face. And the vision in one eye instantly goes dark. So I rush to the ER. I see the ophthalmology resident, and as he's examining my eye, he's asking me where I'm from and what I do. At the time, I was a temp at NPR, and really my only task was to take copy from an old website and delete Oxford commas to get it ready for a new website. So I told him, they call me the serial comma killer. And he laughed in a way that indicated A, he knew what a serial comma was, and B, he set a very low bar for puns. And somewhere through a haze of fear and a concussion, I thought, he likes grammar too. Nice. It turned out my eye was seriously injured. It was filling up with blood, which is why I couldn't see. And while I recovered, I would have to wear an eye patch and go on bed rest and come back in for daily appointments, because if anything went wrong, I could go blind permanently. And so every day I'd come in for an appointment, and my doctor would say something like, I listened to NPR on my way in. I don't know how they've stayed open so long without you. And we'd laugh because we both knew I wasn't important. And then I would follow up with really specific questions about ophthalmology, because I spend a lot of time on WebMD under ordinary circumstances, and having something diagnosably wrong with me had just lent a sense of purpose to my hobby. And during these appointments, I realized my doctor was literally and figuratively a sight for sore eyes. And not only that, but through offhand comments and internet research, I realized we had a lot in common. He grew up in Maryland. I grew up in D.C. Based on graduation dates, I estimated his age to be between 28 and 31. I was 22, which is also an age. Before going to med school, he had taught school in a high school. Around that same time, I attended high school as a student. He was a doctor. I was a hypochondriac. Like, we just made sense. And at the time, I had these very indulgent roommates, and every night over dinner, we'd go over the subtext of that day's appointment. And I would say things like, I think my doctor likes me because he always asks me how I'm feeling. And he wants to know when he's going to see me again. And like, sometimes we don't even have to talk. We can just gaze deeply into each other's eyes. Now, what my roommate should have said is, that's because he's your eye doctor. But instead, what they said is, of course he likes you. You're great. Like, we love you. My roommates were also my parents. One night, I suffered a setback, and my roommate dad had to take me to the hospital at 2 a.m., and after the doctor was done checking out my eye, he said, you know, we have to stop meeting like this. And my dad and I looked at each other and we're like, nice, because obviously that means we should start meeting in some other way, like at a bar for drinks, or to meet his parents, or at the church where we're getting married. And as the weeks go by, I start to think, like, maybe that crossed soccer ball wasn't my chance to impress the soccer guys. Maybe it was my chance to meet my eye doctor. Maybe the ball that blinded me was Cupid's arrow. Maybe this is my destiny. So as it came time to say goodbye to my eye doctor forever, I decided that instead I would ask him out. And I brainstormed this plan with a lot of people, friends, family, roommates. And one of the early plans that was floated was that during my last vision test, I should say, like, sorry, doc, all I can see is you and I. Yeah, and while that plan had flair and did appeal to my doctor's appreciation for bad puns, that plan had to be rejected because that sentence is grammatically unsound. And grammar was like one of our things. What we settled on was that as I was walking out, I would hand him a business card and just say, like, since you're not my eye doctor anymore, and then waltz out with the implications still hanging in the air, which had the benefit of minimizing the window for an in-person rejection. The day of the appointment arrived. I borrowed a dress from my youngest roommate's sister. It was just a little bit too tight and a little bit too short because she was 14 and I was an adult. But the important thing was it had pockets into which I had put the business card, which wasn't actually a business card because I was a temp. It was this card with my full name engraved on it that we had put into my high school graduation announcements, and I had just handwritten my number on it. And I arrive at the appointment, and the attending doctor, Dr. Wilson, is standing there with my doctor boyfriend, which is not a part of the plan. And then Dr. Wilson tells me that there was permanent damage to my eye, and she's detailing that, and that really wasn't a part of the plan. And so then I start panicking a little. I'm like, oh my God, like if I go back to playing soccer, I'll have to wear rec specs, so I'll never meet anyone that way. And my pupils might stay 2 different sizes, and facial symmetry is something we subconsciously look for in a mate. Like, I'm damaged goods, I'll never find love. Like, this is my last chance. And Dr. Wilson stops and she walks out, and my doctor fiance looks at me and he says, do you need me to explain that again? And I say, yes, so he does. And as he's explaining this again, I put my hand in my pocket and I'm turning the card over and over. And as I do this, a thought occurs to me for the first time. and it's that this plan is really inappropriate. Like, I think this qualifies as workplace harassment, and like that's disappointing because always when I pictured harassment in the workplace, I had assumed I'd be the victim, not the perpetrator. And then I'm like, well, I don't have to go through with this. And I think, no, like I've told too many people. I wrote a letter to my grandma. And I realized that when he stops talking, I have to execute this plan that I'm losing confidence in by the second. And suddenly the room begins to feel very warm. And the dress that was just a little bit tight is very constricting, and it's getting harder to breathe. And as I look up, I realize my doctor husband has stopped talking. So I reach into my pocket for the card, and I faint. I just pass out. And when I wake up again, the room is full of people. Dr. Wilson's back. She's lifting up my legs to get blood to my head. And I'm trying to like make sure the card's still in my pocket and also make sure that the dress is just a little too short, doesn't fly up. And she sees this and she's like, Dr. Goodman, get behind her. Don't worry, I won't let him get fresh with you. And I'm like, I wish he would get fresh with me. And they roll me to the emergency room, and the doctors run all sorts of tests. My parents show up, and they're like, so, like, did you do it? And I'm like, no, I fainted. And all the tests come back negative. The doctors don't find anything because there's nothing wrong with me physically. And my parents take me back to the family group house, and I never saw the hot doctor again. I know. I did go back to playing soccer. I do have to wear rec specs, so I haven't met anyone that way. But I'm keeping my good eye open.
Our next storyteller is Tonda Bean. Tonda is a professional writer, trainer, and speaker who has been telling stories and winning awards in public speaking for a number of years. Her story title today is A Sailing Adventure.
My whole emphasis in storytelling has been to get points across, more to educate than to entertain. And so I have been telling stories in workshops. I tell stories as I present other ideas. I like to give an idea and link it to a story, and then we can see through the story the ramifications and implications of that idea and how that idea operates and how it can be applied. All that can be told through story. The entertainment piece is new for me. And so I'm, telling a story, and I still feel like if I'm telling a story, I need to have a learning hook to it. So that's something a lot of other storytellers don't do, but that's who I am. So that's what you get,
So there was a time in the late 80s when I was in my early 20s and I was just not having a good time in life. You see, it was the summer between 2 years of a graduate program in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm from Washington, D.C., and so although it had been a mild southern Wisconsin winter, I had experienced the longest, iciest, coldest, nastiest winter of my life, and I did not want to go back. I came home to D.C. a little weary, a little tired, a little sick. And it turns out that the big event of the summer was a tonsillectomy. Great. So after I recovered a bit, I got in touch with my good friend who was a divorced mother of 2, and we were hanging out, and she announced to me that she had decided she was moving back to her hometown so that she could be closer to her family. And then she continued, she said she was going to send her children off to camp for a week so that they could have some time with their friends before they left. And I said, oh, we should do that. We should have a nice little adventure. We should go somewhere together. And instantly, pictures of Venice came to mind, with gondolas and a beautiful sunset. And after that, I saw tropical sandy beaches and beautiful, handsome, flirtatious men. Did I tell you I was in my early 20s? Okay. So about the time these ideas were crystallizing, she said, "Oh, but I'm saving my leave, so I don't want to take any leave." And I said, "Oh, well, I didn't work this summer, so I don't have any money." So then we decided we needed an adventure, and here's the parameters. It needed to be camp week, less than $100, and it didn't interfere with the workday. And we actually found something. We decided to go and take sailing classes at the Washington Marina. It would be great. It was everything. It had the sparkling water, the interesting people, beautiful sailing, and sunsets. That was going to be it. That was going to be it, okay? So we went bouncing over to the marina, and the first idea I had that the experience wasn't going to be all I had dreamed up was that when I looked out at the water, it wasn't blue. It was kind of gray-brown. It was a lot muddier than what I remembered. And so, we said, okay, that's fine. We'll find the people in the class. And after a while, we found a bunch of people standing on the lawn. Now, if you have ever been an only, then you know that it takes a little time. It's a little difficult as an only to get into the rhythm of the group. Well, when we found this group of people standing on the lawn, we realized that we were onlys 3 different ways. We were the only females. We were the only people clearly out of high school. And we were the only black folk. Go figure. But that's all right. That's all right. We were young women of character. And so we would simply compose ourselves and act with grace and dignity. And that might have worked. It really might have worked, except that there was a 4th way that we were onlys. You see, we were the only people there who had never sailed anything. Everybody else was there for certification, while we were complete newbies. Now, what you need to understand is that while I was not nearly so round as I am now, I was not a small person. And my friend Frankie stands about a head taller than I am, and she also was not a small person. But the boats that we had were tiny. They were called sunfish. They were made out of plexiglass. They were about the size of a twin bed mattress. And they had a hole in the front for the sail, a place in the back for the rudder, and an indentation in the middle for your feet. That was it. So we got out and we got onto these little boats, and there's a special little dance you have to learn to stay right in the water. You have to learn to balance and work with the other person on the boat so that you don't fall over. We learned this dance by capsizing 3 times on the first day, 2 times on the second day. But we persevered. And by the end of the day, the end of the week, we could actually sail. And the instructor came onto our boat with us and gave us maneuvers to do, and we were handling it. We were working together, and we didn't capsize at all that day, and it was just great. And we felt so proud and pleased with ourselves as we sailed back to the dock in our little sunfish. And so I grabbed the sail and put it on the dock and tied the boat, and Frankie was grabbing the rudder, and the instructor came and he said, "Ladies, you did it. You learned everything. You passed the test. You get certified." We said, "Yes!" And then Frankie said, "Yes!" And then she came to step onto the dock, and she missed. And I looked at the instructor, and the instructor looked at me, and we looked at the water. And you couldn't see anything because it's so muddy. And he looked at me and I looked at him, and he said, "She did have on a life jacket, didn't she?" And I said, "Yes, I think she did." And we looked at each other, and we looked at the water, and we looked at each other, and we looked at the water. And I said, "It must be kind of deep right here, isn't it?" He said, "Yeah, I guess it is." And we looked at each other, and we looked at the water, and I had a thought. I said, maybe one of us should do something? What would that be? And about the time that I was percolating on that, she came up. "You all right?" "Yeah, I'm all right." The instructor said, "Well, it's easier if you get back on the dock if you go to the end." And he grabbed the sail and he exited. And we laughed. Frankie and I laughed as we wrestled her onto the dock. And we laughed as we got the boat back to the rack. And we laughed all the way home. Because we'd had our adventure. And the summer got so much better. So if you ever get to a point in life when you are just not having a good time, I suggest that you go on out and look around and do something different. Try something different. Have an adventure. Mine gave me a warm and happy memory to pull out in dreary days. And when I went back to Wisconsin, I sailed. Thank you.
Our final speaker today is Graham Campbell. Graham is a police officer, but he's also a wonderful storyteller who's been telling stories throughout the United States. He is also an award-winning storyteller, and today his story title is Manogram.
The first story I told for Story District, which is a local storytelling group, got nominated to be in their top shelf show. So that's the collection of the best stories of the year. So that was really exciting to be on stage with some really great people in a huge auditorium, big theater with over 1,100 seats. It's kind of fun.
So it was 2008, and I was 32, and I was getting my annual physical. When I say annual, I really mean like, every couple years, because I'm bad at my health. And my doctor is checking me out, and she's feeling my chest. And she says, "Your chest feels ropey." And I said, "Thank you." And she's like, "No, that's not a compliment." She said, "There's some tissue issues maybe. It's probably nothing, but we'd like to get it checked out." And I said, "Sure. Okay, no problem. I have plenty of co-pays to pay. That's not a problem." So she's like, "We have to go, you have to get a mammogram." And I was like, oh, okay. So now I should say that my doctor had recently changed over to a women's practice, meaning that she was all women doctors. There was obviously men who were, patients. But she was like, "Just so you know, though, there's going to be all women pretty much at the mammogram place." I'm like, "No, it's fine. I mean, your magazines are terrible. I can't imagine they're going to be better or worse there." So I get my appointment in 2 weeks at the Avon Breast Cancer Center at Mass General Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. And true to form, I go and I get my bracelet because I'm a patient. And it's all ladies and a couple men, but the men are obviously all there with ladies. I'm the only guy there alone. And I started to feel a little self-conscious because I thought everyone was staring at me. So I started pretending to work on things in the waiting room. Like I was tapping on the thermometer and I was checking like the light bulb. There was a light bulb out and I was like, oh my God. And I was wearing pretty much what this is. I had no pen. I had like no actual tools. But I was like, oh, this seems like it's the air conditioner is working okay, right? And they're like, Graham Campbell. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go check the machine in the back. You guys take care. If there's anything else, any lights go out, you let me know. So I go to the back, and there's the machine where you get the mammogram, the torture machine. And if you haven't, some of you may have had mammograms. I was the only one among my friends to have had a mammogram, male or female. And so we didn't really know what to expect. So first thing I learned about the mammogram machine is that I have the wrong kind of boobs, right? it's like the Goldilocks breasts, right? Like there's too small, which mine are unfortunately a little larger than that, and there's too large, which would be perfect. But mine were just right or wrong, as the case may be, right? Because if you don't know how it works, they take your breast and they put it between these two glass plates, and they smush it down, and they take a picture. Which if you were, I have man boobs, but not big man boobs, so they're just big enough to they want to stick it in, but it squeezes a lot when you get down there. So I'm grabbing this machine, and I'm trying to hold it, and they're pushing the thing down. Now, the other thing I had going against me, aside from the size of my mammaries, was I have a hairy chest, which again, not I'm ashamed of that. I mean, this happens to men. You have hair on your chest. It's uncommon in the mammogram world. It is. So the lady's like, "Oh, you have a lot of hair." I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. And so the hair distorts the image on the platen, right? So she spent an hour on both boobs, because I got them both checked, moving hairs away with a rubber glove. It was incredibly painful. It was like she was tearing the hair follicle by follicle sort of out of my chest. And so it's like, oh, no, almost there. And I'm sort of contorting in these crazy positions. And finally, it's over, and the worst is come. And now I get ushered into the waiting room for the doctor. So the doctor arrives with her resident, and the resident is this incredibly beautiful woman who's my age. And I'd, at this point in my life, at 32, I decided just to sort of ask women on dates, right? I'd tired of playing the game. I was like, you know what, you only live once, we'll just see what happens, right? So I saw her, and I was like, all right, this is it, right? Once the doctor finishes, I'm going to see if I can get this resident, get her number. And so the doctor's like, great news, Graham, your breasts are weird, but there's no cancer. So cool. And she's like, but we just had to run some tests. It's all going to be fine. And then Carrie here is going to give you some information. And she steps out, and I'm like, this is it, right? My moment with Carrie. We're all set. This is where I'm going to make my move. And so I realized I didn't have anything to write on, but she had a piece of paper in her hand. She had a pamphlet. And I was like, I'll just write my number on the pamphlet. And she says, okay, Graham, yep, the doctor said you're all fine. Here's a small pamphlet to go over, what you had. So here, take a look and read at it. And I'm taking it, and I'm about to sort of ask for a pen to get her number. And I noticed the pamphlet is a cartoon dude. It's like a little cartoon man with breasts. And it says in big letters, gynecomastia, when men develop breasts. And so I realized this is not the pamphlet that I can write my number on. I have game, but no game is strong enough to overcome a cartoon boob man with men developing breasts. So I let her go to chase love elsewhere, and I went home to massage my very ample but right-sized breasts. Thank you.
That's our show for today. Thank you for watching Personal Stories, and I hope you'll tune in to watch our next show. If you're interested in becoming a storyteller yourself, please contact me at my email address, jrmelmed, M-E-L-M-E-D, @comcast.net. Thanks for watching Personal Stories. The other technique is what I call the foreign immigrant technique. So this call I have no idea whether this is going to be a robocall. You know what a robocall is? It's a computer that making multiple calls all at the same time, and there's a bank of people who are listening in, and when they hear, oh, this is a live one, they quickly pick up. Well, it takes them 2 or 3 seconds to do that. So my phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and I say, hello! Hello! Still no answer. Hello! Good morning. May I speak with the homeowner, please? Please, are you the homeowner? Now, I have no idea why this guy is shouting at me. Just because I'm foreign doesn't mean that I'm deaf. So I say, I'm putting you on the no-call list. Thank you very much. I'm so happy. No, I didn't do that, but this is true. He said, I'm putting you on the no-caller list. So try these techniques. If you want to learn how to do this, come to our Toastmasters Club.